it's so, I mean, I hate to use the word, but it's so regressive to put restrictions on the examining of thinking in a university. I mean, it's kind of crazy. I mean, what you went through in one of your most recent public speeches, where they allowed these kids to be in the room with you with bullhorns, and they were screaming. Jamie, see if you can find the video of that. What was the name?
McMaster. That was at McMaster University. Yeah.
And you were giving your speech, and there were supposed to be some other people involved. They backed out, and you decided to continue on. So you're standing there in front of these people that were there to hear you talk, and there's a group of kids with bullhorns, like literally, and shouting and yelling and chanting with signs in the room. Mm-hmm. Just completely disrupting what you're doing, and they allowed this all to happen.
Mm-hmm. Air horns as well. So, yeah, and they were blowing air horns quite close to me. That was the one thing I really objected to, because air horns actually happen to be quite loud.
No, yeah, it's actually an assault on your ears. It's very bad for your hearing. Like, you're not supposed to be in a room with those without hearing protection. They're supposed to be, like, for, like, scary things. Like, play some of this, Jamie, so we can hear how crazy it is.
And psychology is that once you start to regard yourself as a
so there's yelling, shut him down, no freedom for hate speech, and the hate speech thing has like the Prince symbol meets some sort of Martian language. Like, what the fuck is that they have on that no freedom for hate speech?
I guess it's a polygender symbol of some sort. There's a fist in it. But one of the things that was really not so good about all of that was that a lot of the people who were protesting were standing behind a hammer and sickle banner, which just absolutely amazes me, because I still haven't been able to quite figure this out. I can't figure out why you couldn't do that with a Nazi symbol, but you can do that with a hammer and sickle. There's a reason, and maybe it's because the Nazi doctrine was so explicitly racist. But God, it's not like the hammer and sickle wasn't equally murderous, or actually quite profoundly more murderous, as it turned out. So, and how people cannot still know that is beyond me. And to rally behind a banner like that without realizing what they're doing, or even worse, realizing it and still organizing themselves behind it. And then to complain about hate speech. No, there's no real communicating with people who are demonstrating like that. They're in a kind of trance, And I went up to try to talk to a couple of them. And but when you look at people who are in that state of mind, they're not looking at you as if you're a human being. You're the target of their conceptualizations. You're the realization of their conceptualizations. Of course, they didn't listen to anything I said. Well, hardly anyone did, although I got to talk outside, because I took everybody outside and then spoke out there for a while.
And when you were outside, were they still yelling and bullhorns and the whole deal?
But what happened, I went outside and I stood on a couple of benches, and the people that wanted to hear kind of made a circle around me, and that more or less by chance pushed all the protesters to the back so that I could address the people that actually wanted to listen to what I was saying. And
so did you have a dialogue with them, or did you give a speech, and how did that work?
I didn't have a dialogue at all with the protesters.
Well, I mean, with the people that came to see you.
Yeah, that worked out okay once I got outside. And I wasn't particularly upset with the fact that the protesters had showed up. I mean, practically speaking, because I'm in this peculiar situation where if the protesters show up, that's good, and if they don't show up, that's good too. It's good if they show up because I have access to a YouTube audience, obviously, and then it gets filmed, and the films get put together, and that gets put online. And generally speaking, when the social justice types have come after me, they've done a pretty admirable job of discrediting themselves. And so that seems to be all to the good. And then if they let me speak, well, then I get to speak, and I can put that on YouTube. So it's a very strange situation for me, because as long as I don't do anything too stupid, or anything any stupider than I have done, let's say, I seem to come out okay. And like, I'm certainly not counting on that continuing, and I'm surprised by it, but so far it seems to be working out. So, hooray.
Well, I think the way you handled it is admirable. The way you kept your cool and just continued talking and didn't flip out and didn't give in, didn't succumb to the provocation. It's because they're obviously provoking you, and they're obviously. I just don't understand how the university allows them to do that. How they allow them to be in that room. First of all, with those air horns, which are really bad for anybody in that room who's near them. I mean, it causes hearing damage.
Yeah, well, and the one person who was air horning me was really quite, I would say, let's say forward about it. You know, they were coming close enough to me to do some damage, but you know, I have seen the odd person at those rallies that really isn't well put together. You know, people, I look in their eyes and I think, no, you're definitely here for the wrong reasons. And I think it's more characteristic often of the guys that I see at the events rather than the women. I mean, I'm not sure about that. I'm obviously speculating, but you know, I have a reasonably good clinical intuition, and some of the guys I see at those events, I don't know what their story is, man. I don't know what they're up to. I guess what are they trying to do? Be allies of the women for their own nefarious purposes? I mean, that's what it looks like to me. You know,
well, there's certainly an issue with that. It's a common thread with men, that especially in the male feminist category, that they align themselves with these women as allies, and as this, you know, they take this moral high ground, and they're this person that's going to show, you know, other men how to do feminism and how to behave with women, and they're really just sort of, they're mining the situations for social points.
Yeah,
you know?
Well, for social and sexual points, my guess is.
Yeah,
absolutely.
For sure.
There's something seriously creepy about it. I mean, I saw, too, that guy at the recent Berkeley demonstration, the guy who hit someone with a bike lock, remember, in a bag, and he was hiding behind some women, and then he darted out and just nailed the guy with a bike lock, with what turned out to be a bike lock.
Yeah, a guy was just hanging there talking. He wasn't being violent. He wasn't doing anything. And by the way, that guy turned out to be a professor. They found that guy.
Yeah, and so has that been verified, all of that?
There's photographs of him. There's photographs of his face. They compared his eyes to the professor's eyes. They know that the guy was there, and that the guy aligns himself with Marxism, and he's this like communist / socialist professor who's very adamantly against right-wing ideology and this kind of shit. So they're pretty sure that that's the guy.
Yeah. Well, I kind of followed that, and I noticed all that. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, watching what he did, that's the true face of those people.
It's assault. I mean, he hit a guy with a deadly weapon.
Yeah.
I mean,
I also thought it was blackly comic that it was a bike lock. I mean, that just figures, you know. So,
well, it's just the idea that you could just walk up to someone you don't like the way they think and hit them in the head with a metal thing. It's just so crazy and so delusional and so indicative of someone who looks at a person as the other. You're not looking at it as a human being who disagrees with you. Like, and not only that, a young human being. Like, talk about a lack of empathy.
Yeah.
I mean, you're expecting this 20-year-old guy, or however old the guy was, who got hit in the head. You're expecting him to have his ideology down solid and not be influenced by peers or not be curious about what this argument is about. The guy wasn't even yelling anything. He was just standing there.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I thought about the protesters at McMaster, too. You know, it's partly why I don't get upset. It's like I look at these kids that are out there protesting, you know, apart from the professional protester types, and I think, well, Jesus, they've been served so badly by the education system that it's absolutely beyond belief, you know. They're basically being sent out as avatars of this pathological postmodern movement by their professors, who are themselves too cowardly to show up, generally speaking, and certainly aren't brave enough to debate me. You know,
or if they do show up, they're like this guy with a mask on hitting people in the head who was a professor.
Yeah, well, they don't believe in dialogue. You know, it's not part of their it's not part of the postmodern ethos to have a dialogue with people you don't agree with.
So you weren't able to talk to anyone that opposed you?
Not so far, not in any serious sense.
Were you able to talk to anyone that had the hammer and sickle sign and ask them, like, do you understand what this stands for? What does this mean to you? Like, what are you trying to project by having this sign?
Yeah, no, it wasn't possible at that venue. I mean, like I said, whenever I got close to anybody that was protesting, there was no one-to-one human interaction. You know, I mean, I can tell when someone's going to be willing to communicate with me, and when they've kind of got cold eyes like a codfish, you know, whatever they're looking at has nothing to do with me, or very little to do with me.